Welcome to Module 11. This is Aerospace, Human Resource Management in Aerospace, basically. And our guest today is Barry Wohl. Now, because of COVID, typically Barry comes in and gives a live lecture. But because of COVID, unfortunately, we don't have our live, classes. So we're just going to tape this. And you'll get as much out of it as you would as if he was live. But I will let you know that Barry can receive your any emails from you about this. He is in the executive recruitment business, all levels from junior engineers all the way through to presidents of companies and CEOs of aerospace companies. So he's very highly connected. So just a little bit of background. Barry and I have worked together starting 30 years ago. It seems like yesterday we were just talking. So Barry is president of the Wohl Group, WOHLGROUP.com, a company which basically he owned and founded when he retired from being a vice president of human resources. And we worked together at two companies, which was, three actually, Boeing-DeHavilland, Bombardier-DeHavilland, Bombardier Aerospace, and then Safran, which was originally Messier Dowty. He was also a vice president of human resources at Vector Aerospace in 2009 to 10. And he had basically 14 years as VP at Safran and 4 years as VP at Bombardier Aerospace-DeHavilland division, but he was there earlier than that. He also was a pension consultant with the Messier Consulting Group. He has extensive labor experience with unions such as steelworkers, Canadian Auto Workers, and the big Canadian union, it's called Unifor, and the International Association of Machinists. He's extensive experience in negotiating change and utilizing an interest-based bargaining approach. So Barry really, in the 1990s, pioneered, along with his colleagues at that time, a win-win situation with unions, which seems to be a model that has stuck today. He's chair of the Ontario Aerospace Council Task Force on Human Resource Management, and he's also involved in the the actual National Aerospace Human Resource Strategy. So Barry, you're on the video here, so welcome. And students, he's a great colleague of mine through all these years. We've even been to Paris together, if you remember that, Barry.
Oh, of course, of course.
And all the human resource issues we would face where we were dealing between Canada and France and Britain at the time.
Yeah.
So this is Barry's, it's basically going to be 7 sections, the relationship of human resource management and aerospace, human resource as a strategic partner in aerospace operations. It's not just personnel. Then we're going to talk about the culture. Then he's going to talk about the relationship with unions. And then there are special unique challenges. And he's even mentioned COVID here for our contemporary times. And then what are the secrets of success and the relationship between aerospace and government relations. So these are just the notes he's going to talk to. So Barry, I'm going to hand it over to you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Stephen. No, it's unbelievable that we've known each other for over 30 years now.
Very much so. Very much so. It's and all you students, by the way, time will go fast for you as well. So make the most of it. Go ahead, Barry.
But it's important to realize, maintain your relationships. Like it's good to maintain your relationships. So Steve and I are just a live example of that. So let's start with human resources management.
Barry, I would turn your video off only because so there's no distraction, because it is a one-way dialogue, and then we'll turn it on when we're wrapping up.
Oh, so okay. You don't want me to look at the? Okay.
No. I want you to look at. You'll see the screen, but just close your own video so the students aren't distracted.
Oh, gotcha. Let me try to do that. Hold on.
That's it. Now you're off.
Oh, now I'm off? Okay. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we'll start with human resources management and how it's evolved over the years. As Stephen was saying, 30 years ago, when we first met each other, HR was very much an administrative function. And it's evolved to be very much a strategic business partner these days. And so has the HR professional association. It started with a personnel association 30 years ago, and it's evolved to be a human resources professional association today. And leadership begins now to better understand the value of human resources with respect to implementing change. Businesses, can no longer live off the foreign exchange differential that existed between, Canada and the U.S. And what I mean by that is anything made in Canada, if it was being sold to the U.S., they were getting paid in U.S. dollars. So they were able to get a stronger dollar back against expenditures that are in Canadian dollars. So you need to better manage your business, and HR has been at the forefront of doing that. In addition to that, human resources management has included succession planning, organizational development, developing corporate universities, hard and soft skill training, compensation, and also other issues that have evolved, like diversity, harassment, and health and safety. And of course, mental wellness and mental illness, which has really come into the forefront over the last 30 years.
Barry, why don't you talk a little bit more about that, why that happened? I mean, before we move,
It's interesting because I've actually, have some firsthand experience with that, Stephen. Back in the 90s, when we had problems with employees, the goal then was to how do you get them out of the business, not to try to understand if there was something else that created that troubled employee. There was just no awareness of it. And even when you dealt with some of the external services, they really didn't understand the mental illness that existed in the companies. And today, of course, that's totally different. We know that mental illness is at the heart of many of the problems that have always existed in companies. And I know myself that some of the ways we handled issues back in the 90s was to sort of fire somebody, where today, there's more of a recognition of the mental illness, and then you try to deal with that. And
you give counseling services.
Counseling services, using external resources that are more aligned with understanding, mental illness. So that although you may not be the expert, there are services that you can easily call on to help you with that. So it's more at the forefront today than it was 30 years ago. That's for sure. Now the importance of data and how to manage it. You need, now companies are global, so you need to be able to manage HR systems and payroll systems on a global platform. So that's now more at the forefront as companies are more global.
But these systems could be outsourced, right? Payroll systems, compensation systems, those actual software, the systems architecture and security can be outsourced. Am I correct?
They can be outsourced. Often they're bought in, like they're bought as a system that's not developed internally, but it's managed internally. But it's a system that's bought from an external provider.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now let's move on to HR as a strategic partner. So I mentioned that HR is not as transactional as it used to be. It's more strategic, but you need to have a senior management that understands the value of HR as being a strategic partner, and what that does is it brings the value to the forefront of people. So people measures become part of the strategy, like training, development, succession planning. And these days, as businesses evolve through acquisition, different things come into play, like culture and different management styles, and alignment needs to happen for the company to work functionally in the future. Um, there's new skills that come into play, like program management, where you may be managing a customer requirement in several countries. So how do you manage that for the customer? Program management is the style that's
Also across functions, as well as
yeah,
even aircraft programs. You could be a vice president of program management in charge of 3 aircraft programs across 4 countries, 6, 10, or 10 suppliers. It could be extreme complexity.
exactly. And the customer doesn't need to see all of that. They just want to know when their part or their system is going to be ready and delivered. And the program manager is the main contact for the customer. But they may, as Stephen says, they may be reaching across several countries, several functions, to understand where the organization is with respect to delivery. And so the initiatives that HR gets involved in are really business initiatives. So they're more integrated with the business strategy, and successful leaders make the development of people a competitive advantage, just as technology could be a technical advantage. The development of the people is treated the same way. And in engineering, you see what's called a dual career path, where in the old days, the best technical person usually became the worst manager in the organization. Dual career paths for engineering is important, because you have a career path at a similar level for the best technical expert in your organization, to be treated similar to the manager of the engineering organization.
And Barry, that's exactly what this MEng program is completely about. And it's a management path that students can choose to follow in their master's streaming. So this path is for those people. It's a matter of interest.
Yep. Okay. So let's move on to aerospace culture. So culture is really about alignment of the workforce under the mission, vision, and values. And that's the way that large companies, align their workforce. They create a mission, a vision to achieve the mission, and then they create values, which is the way that leaders expect you to work. And the behavior drives the culture, and of course the culture then will drive the performance of the organization. And successful leaders will make people culture a competitive advantage, just as technology again would be. Now the aerospace has evolved from cost plus, which was really aligned with military and government work, where the government would pay you the cost of developing a program plus a profit. And so we've evolved from a cost plus environment to one that is very competitive. In other words, today airplane manufacturers, when they outsource landing gear or engines, they tell you what they want to pay. And you've got to be able to make it for that price at a profit. Of course, quality, cost, and schedule and safety are the #1 customer focuses. AS 9100 requires companies to follow established processes and embedded into that is the idea of continuous improvement.
Just explain the AS 9100 as a standard and where its roots are.
Yeah, it's the aerospace standard, which was largely developed from the ISO standards. And what's happened is some of the main manufacturing areas like aerospace, automotive, medical, they've all developed their own standards. Medical is, I think, 13481. Automotive is it's TS, I think, something, TS 16,000 and something. But so the AS 9100 is the aerospace ISO standard.
Okay.
Okay. So continuous improvement has been, you know, a common. I mean, you go back 30 years. We've been working on continuous improvement, largely starting between 30 and 40 years ago. The Toyota manufacturing system, which evolved from Deming's work, was really the leader in continuous improvement, and the other industries like aerospace has sort of followed from the Toyota manufacturing system, implementing 5S or 6S, which includes the safety standard, and then Six Sigma, driven by more data and KPIs. The matrix organization is, sorry?
That's key performance indicators, so it's a measurement system.
Yeah, Steve, I'm losing you a little bit. Can you speak a little louder?
Okay, I just said that's the KPIs, the key performance indicators.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and large companies use the key performance indicators to drive results. So if they need to improve their, you know, reduce their scrap or improve their on-time delivery, they'll use those kinds of indicators so that the employees can have a better idea of what's important to the organization, you know, at any point in time. And employees, you know, they align to those indicators to help improve the business results. The matrix organization was evolved in line with performance management. You know, in line with the matrix management was aligned with the I'm thinking performance management, but I really mean program management.
Let me give an example of the matrix approach. So if a company, let's say Bombardier, has let's say the business jet, Global Express, let's say, and another aircraft, let's say it's the Challenger aircraft, and they're making and manufacturing in the same facility. Well, you've got people in charge of each program, but you've got to share your resources from all the functions. So aerodynamics, airframe design, tooling, manufacturing, engineering, avionics, etc., and in the factory as well. So you have it where it's a matrixed approach. So to the horizontal axis is could be the Challenger program and the Global Express, and the vertical axis would be the various functions that would be deployed to that. So the management architecture, the management team has to manage that complexity. You mentioned it earlier. So that's an example of a matrix approach.
Yeah, and the big advantage of the matrix approach, as Stephen indicated, is to better utilize your resources. Because one program, you know, once you're finished with stress, for example, once that program is finished with it, you know, if it was just attached to that one program, you know, the engineers wouldn't be busy, you know, once they've done their work. Mm-hmm. And this way, you have the stress people attached to every program, so that they're, you know, better utilizing their resources, and you know, it's just better, you know, for the organization that way.
Then you didn't have to do layoffs.
Keeps the engineers fully employed, so you don't have to lay off
and lose the skills.
And lose the skill set. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, question: is there a cultural difference in Boeing, Bombardier, or Airbus? Um, and of course, there was cultural differences between those three organizations. The different countries of origin. So, a lot of the culture, evolves from where the management and employees originated. And, there's just different styles. Um, there's definitely pride in working in the aerospace industry. And what you typically find is that once you're in the aerospace industry, you're typically going to be there, throughout your career. And in fact, it's more visible at European air shows, which are the largest air shows in the world. But when they have civilian days at the air show, they have a million or more people show up for their civilian days at the air shows. So the Europeans are very, very proud of the aerospace industry in their countries. I have to admit, more so than Canadians are.
Interesting.
Hopefully that'll change.
Well, listen, Barry, I want to go back to this culture from my own point of view. There
Okay.
is no doubt, excuse me, there is no doubt that the culture between Boeing, Bombardier, and Airbus is different. Is it very different? Well, that's a matter of where you create the boundaries, but they are different. But I will tell everybody this from one who has worked on the front line with engineers in all those companies in various functions, and well, not so much Airbus, but definitely if you add British Aerospace and Safran and other companies, I've been right in the front line of it. And I can tell you from an engineering hands-on point of view, there's little difference in the culture of an aerospace engineer. So if you're, let's say, an aerodynamicist or a stress engineer or a tool engineer, manufacturing engineer, you're easily portable. Your skills are easily portable from Texas to Lancashire in England to Northern Ireland to even maybe to Toulouse, France, except the language, you get a different language. But I have found that the engineering frontline workers and the shop floor or the professional engineers in the drawing and design offices, etc., are actually very similar mentality, similar work habits, similar practices, the same work calculations and so on. But the management cultures and the financial drivers, the economic, the local uniqueness is much, much, much more apparent in management circles. So that's been my experience. I just wanted to point that out. The workers, yeah, go ahead.
I agree with that. And you'll find that within engineering, in the States, you'll see engineers from all sorts of countries around the world. And the engineering skills are definitely transferable. So there's no barriers there. Stephen's right. You usually see the cultural differences in the management.
Big time.
Yeah. And the big difference, and Airbus is changing, but Airbus was probably the last to come into line. Boeing and Bombardier were more in line with dealing with stock exchanges and having to demonstrate results quarterly. They got more business aligned earlier than Airbus, where Airbus, the European states were more supported by government.
Yep.
They weren't as aligned until recently. Now they're the companies like Safran's a public company now, and I think the Airbus is as well. So they're more aligned to the kinds of challenges that the North American companies are faced with. But they were later to get into it, and you could see that in the management culture.
Interesting. Okay, we'll go ahead with aerospace unions. Go ahead.
Yeah, so unions, what we found here in Canada, that many of the real tough union officials that aerospace companies had to deal with were imported from the UK. And the UK developed tough union officials, really stemming originally from the Industrial Revolution. I mean, the employees in the UK, had to fight through some difficult times, and so a lot of those people, when they moved to Canada, brought the same sort of lack of trust to the Canadian companies, and so it was difficult. Getting a little bit easier, but not easy by any stretch. The cornerstone union philosophies just don't fit to the way commitments had to be made to customers, and so the union philosophies just weren't affordable anymore. So the biggest aerospace company, which at the time was the De Havilland aerospace company, had a history of strikes and disagreement, and something had to give. And they had, I remember in 1990, when I first met Stephen, we had the first settlement without a strike in 22 years, as an example. Bombardier then bought the company, but something had to give. And the Bombardier negotiation of 1994 set the new way. So it opened up the closed shop at the De Havilland facility. It opened up a lot of workplace flexibility. And what did the employees get? Well, they got the Global Express. And in fact, just till today, I mean, things have changed in 2019 and 2020. But for basically over 25 years, they got to build the Global Express business jet, which they couldn't have built the way the company was organized back in 1994.
Can you just tell a little bit, because I remember those negotiations, and I remember you were, along with the president at the time, Ken Lever, were in 24-hour talks. If I can remember, you hardly got sleep. Just tell them a little bit about, without, obviously, even probably today, some of the stuff that went on there is still confidential, but express what went on, it's as far as the negotiations way into the night. And I think it was even used as a management training program, some of the stuff from the.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, the union was trying to film that negotiation, and there was a documentary that came out, which was very one-sided, largely because the company didn't allow the union to film anything that was confidential. It's really in the negotiation rooms. So the only thing that was filmed of the company was really walking to a meeting room or things like that. But I think that the Canadian public got to see really what happened behind the scenes, in the union, in the union negotiation room. So company wasn't there; it was just a union, and I think a lot of people got their eyes opened up. I mean, there was, in fact, a lot of swearing.
Yes, there was. I remember that.
A lot of swearing, a lot of drinking. And it, I don't know why they filmed it, because it really didn't present a very professional,
no,
at all, a professional view of unions, and it's just unfortunate it came out like that. But because that was public, I can tell you sometimes we had to deal with that. We had to deal with the union officials having had a few extra drinks and things like that, and it's just hard to get things dealt with. The union's MO was really to negotiate for hours and hours. I think Stephen, we were.
the philosophy was wear you out, but
wear you out. Yeah,
that wouldn't be tolerated today. All that.
No, but that was the goal, was try to wear you out. So I mean, I made sure I got a lot of sleep, and when I walked into a negotiation, even if it was 4 a.m, I always shaved before I walked into the negotiation. And the reason I did that is I want them to see that I was fresh, that I wasn't worn out, and try to demoralize them a bit, because that's exactly what they tried to do, is wear you out and get you to agree to something that you normally wouldn't have agreed to.
What
So
was
you had to be in great shape. You had to work very long hours, and the goal was to get the contract signed.
what was management's ultimate leverage? Was it losing this Global Express here? Was that
Yeah, it was.
there must
It
have
was
been leverage,
Global Express. If we couldn't come to a deal that was satisfactory to Bombardier, they would have built the Global Express in Montreal.
and that's going strong today in Downsview.
Well, not only that, Stephen, you've got different variations of it as well. Like today, you've got the Global 7500, which is booming. I mean, right now with COVID, and I'll get to the impact of
Yeah.
COVID shortly, but one of the big impacts in aerospace is, executives are flying by business jet. They're not flying commercial because of the risk. And
I will let you know, Barry, our students each year in this course are working with Bombardier Downsview. Soon
yeah,
they're going to be moving to Malton to the
right.
airport. But that you're right, that beautiful aircraft and its variants is sitting in the factory there as we speak today. And the pride around it is incredible. It's just incredible how successful it has been.
Yeah, it basically saved what's left of Bombardier. Without that, and who knows what would have happened if it would have moved to Montreal, but without the work we did in 1994 and salvaging the program, by the way, which was engineered in Toronto. If you remember, Stephen,
Yes,
the engineering was.
I remember it well because the system I was involved with.
Yeah, the Bombardier engineering system,
it was used.
Right.
Of course, yes, of course.
And so all the engineering was done in Toronto, and we were able to maintain the work, the manufacturing, for being Toronto based. And really that's what's left of Bombardier. If you look at what's left of the Bombardier company, I mean, there's not much, but the one thing is it's the business jets.
Yes.
That's all that's left of them. They sold the C series, which was really their single aisle commercial jet, and they've sold off the skidoos and sea-doos, and the trains. The trains are sold off. So really, the only thing left today is really the Global Express.
What happened to Challenger?
Well, it's evolved. I mean, I think they're still maintaining Challengers.
Sorry, it's just sustaining. It's not. There's no new production.
There's no new production. It's just.
I got it. It's just the spare parts and so on.
Yeah. But there were a lot of those sold. That
Yes.
Challenger was their first business jet.
Yes.
Other than what they bought, they bought Learjet and maybe some other companies, but the Challenger business jet was their first, really business jet.
Yes.
But so the knowledge of that was used to develop the new jets. So the Global Express.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go ahead and with the unique challenges of.
So today, of course, COVID-19 is not only a challenge in aerospace, but it's a challenge to everybody, and so. You need, HR is at the forefront of dealing with the COVID. So you've got health and safety, which is normally part of the HR department, having to deal with that. And it's all the sanitation, making sure employees are wearing masks, the safety, the social distancing within the companies. The goal is, and you can see it from some current changes, we're back into more of a lockdown now. But companies are not being locked down. So companies are operational, and that's largely because they've been managing the social distancing and the masks and of course the working from home, which was something that I could see evolving in recruitment, a couple of years ago. And how did I see that? I had candidates asking me if they'd be able to work from home. And what's happened is, the cost of daycare and both partners, both husbands and wives, having to work to buy $1 million homes in Toronto, for example, you know, employees are looking for ways to sort of cut down on costs. And if somebody can work from home, then it's easier for them to deal with their children coming home from school a little early, and you being able to make it, you know, for that. So the working from home requirement was there. Not many companies, you know, were open to it. Of course, with COVID, that's opened up the work from home, and that's going to be a part of business life from now on. I think personally it'll be very difficult to get people back into the office, because of all the reasons they wanted to work from home before COVID. COVID just gave them a logical excuse to get the companies to agree to that. But of course, this has now created a whole you know, change in how do you manage the employees working from home, and so that's been a real challenge, you know, for HR management. Are we moving on to labor?
Yeah, well, you never really did talk about the resistance to change, just as a cultural phenomena in aerospace.
Well,
you really did focus on this, but go ahead. Maybe
well,
just
there's
mention.
been a natural resistance to change, and that's part of the fact that, you know, like, change is ongoing, and I think that I even have clients today that they still have employees resistant to change in really established aerospace companies, and it's unfortunate, but they've tolerated that because of the skill set. And one of the areas, Stephen, it's really not in the engineering. I think the engineers have been very not resistant to change. I think they've been very open to that. But where I find the most resistance is in the machining side. You know, some of the old school machinists have been the most difficult to change.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what have you seen, let's say, the 20-somethings and 30-somethings that have entered the workforce in, let's say, the last 2 to 15 years? Have you noticed a more open-minded attitude toward change?
Yeah, they're very open to change, and because they've been you know, on the coattails of the technology change. I mean,
yes.
Technology has changed. It changes these days daily or weekly for those folks. So change is nothing for the millennials.
Yeah, and the other thing, there's no country in the world, well, let's say no city other than maybe London, New York, as multicultural as Toronto, as the greater Toronto area, where you're, by definition, if you want to survive, you better be open to constant complex change, social change, cultural change. So in the DNA, it's a given that in this country anyway, change is something you must completely and absolutely live.
Right. And the millennials grew up with that diversity. So,
Yes.
you know, you know, I'll tell you, when I was going to school, you know, I'm probably a little older than you, Stephen.
Yeah,
But
not much.
when I was going to school, you know, there was very little diversity in Canada at that
Yes.
time. And these days, you know, there's just so much more diversity that you know, people are growing up. You know, it's no big deal to
That's no
anybody.
big deal. Yes, yes.
It's no big deal. And
So
people
it looks like the thing that we experienced in the 90s when doing that transformational change initiative, that's not the big barrier today. I mean, I always say, you know, people do resist, and yes, they do, and especially when they get into management and power positions. But the general employee population is open to change because they realize it's a competitive environment and they've got to adapt.
Right. And so they're more open to it. Whereas,
Yes.
you know, in 30 years ago, there were still, you know, borders, you know, protecting jobs.
Yes.
But today there are no borders. Like, you're competing with the world, and if you're not competitive, you'll lose the advantage and lose the business. So they're just more open to it.
Okay. Go ahead. And I think you're down near the ITAR here.
Okay, so we still have security clearance requirements on
Yeah.
military goods. So that's control goods and ITAR. And that is a bit restrictive. I'll comment on that. If you're not a permanent resident or a citizen, the control goods are very restrictive. I've tried to hire some people who had work permits, so they were able to work in Canada, but it was too difficult to clear them on a timely basis. You could clear them, but it took 6 months or more to clear them. So employers were less open to hiring somebody just on a work permit.
Yes.
So for kids coming out of graduating, the sooner you get your permanent resident status, the better it's going to be for you in terms of being able to, more easily find employment.
As a matter of interest, let's take a case study. Let's say an Indian mechanical engineering or aerospace engineering graduate that does his master's or her master's degree at U of T, let's say at UTIAS, University of Toronto Institute for Aerospace Studies. And they've said, listen, I really want to stay here. I want to immigrate. I want to become a formal permanent resident. With a bachelor's and master's in engineering and 4 years away from getting a PEng, how long does it take them to get residency? Are the governments still open? Is it
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
the norm?
they'll get a 2 to 3 year work permit.
Yes.
And while they're on the work permit, they can apply for the permanent residency status.
Yes.
And because of their education and skill set, most likely they'll get it. I've yet to see anybody that has not gotten it.
Yeah, I have not taken any statistics from the students in these courses. I mean, who stays and who goes back to their homelands, whether it's China, India, or the Middle East. But, I think 40% of the students would be from those countries.
Oh, sure.
And I'm not sure of those 40% who actually stays, but it'd be an interest. I should maybe do a survey about it.
It'd be an interesting survey. I'd be interested in seeing the survey information.
Yes.
Personally, but that's what typically happens. The kids will, as soon as they get their work permit, they'll try to apply for the permanent resident status.
Okay.
And they've got skill sets that are hard to find in Canada. So
it's funny when you call them kids. Some of them have big bushy beards. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. So secrets to success over the years. Okay.
So we have about 10 minutes to go, Barry. These are your last 2 points: secrets of success and the role of the government, and then add a little bit about what you do, and we'll pass out your information for people to
Okay. Okay.
So go ahead.
So secrets to success: trust is the basis of all relationships. So without it, it's just difficult to achieve a successful career. I have always found personally that my background's in mathematics and business, and I've found that to be very important to easily become more strategic and to be comfortable in a boardroom environment, which is where strategy is discussed. Now, always be a good networker, because you never know when that's going to come back to help you down the road. So don't burn any bridges. Network. Always remember that the more people you connect with and know, the more leverage you have to be successful down the road. And I always say, be a net giver, and if you give, you hopefully you'll get.
I want to just talk about that, Barry, and tell students my own personal story. One of the things that gave me great success in the early years in Canada was joining external professional associations. My first one was the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, but also even when I started, involved with the aerospace industry, you can give lectures or speeches to the local Aerospace Industries Association, etc., and get involved in some kind of volunteer work where you're maybe being part of a special interest group. Let's say you specialize in composite materials, or you specialize in avionics, or whatever it happens to be, or human resources. but get involved in professional associations. So, like Barry, you were heavily involved or are heavily involved in the Human Resource Management Association.
Yeah, and in the Ontario Aerospace.
Yes,
The
and the
OAC.
Ontario Aerospace Council. So I want students to realize this is a very, very powerful initiative that you can take, is to volunteer, get involved, give of your skills, and you get noticed.
Stephen, I've got a current example. I was on the board of the Human Resources Professional Association. I'm going back probably 15 years ago. And one of the people that I was on the board with just called me the other day and gave me some work to do.
Incredible.
You know, and it's because of the relationship, because, you know, she's known me. She's working on a contract for an aerospace company, and they needed a job that they were having trouble recruiting for. So she reached out to me.
And that's 15 years. That's
Yeah.
beyond me.
Yeah.
I have the same story myself. In 2001, I worked for a company in the US in New York City called LNF, part of Magellan Corporation, which is Canadian. But LNF, well, the fellow who was on one of my teams, I had 6 teams there, or 7 teams. One of the fellows was the director of cost accounting, and he was a manager actually, he wasn't director at the time. And that same fellow became vice president of an aerospace company in St. Louis. He's since moved on, but after 18 years, or maybe it wasn't 18, 16 to 18 years, he contacted me out of the blue to help him out with some work. And we're still talking about issues. He's back in Texas now. He moved from St. Louis to Texas. But the point I'm making is you get remembered, and you never know the day when someone from your distant past, if you've maybe lost connections, but still you're remembered, and you've got to get out there. That's the bottom line. So that's my story as well.
Yeah, and you know, always, you know, these days too, don't forget about LinkedIn. You know, through LinkedIn, you'll be able to stay connected with a lot of your professional relationships over the years, and that's another way of you know, making yourself visible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So
role of government
yes.
and regulations. Well, you know, we need the government today in aerospace, and I've been using actually the LinkedIn platform wherever I can to comment to you know, Trudeau or any other senior government officials that you happen to see, that they can't forget about aerospace. Aerospace is in real difficult trouble these days. There, of course, with nobody flying, there aren't really any new programs.
Yeah, the aviation, what we'll call it, the aviation industry, period.
Yeah, the aviation industry, period, is exactly it. It's very, very difficult right now, and if at any time there ever was, it needs government support right now. And without it, you know, a lot of companies are gonna fall by the wayside. And the skill set was really tight, you know, before the pandemic, and really what's happened in aerospace, in the GTA anyway, it was a bit of a double whammy. You know, the problems with the 737 MAX, the Boeing program, the 737 MAX, that hit aerospace in 2019. So a lot of the supply chain, not really engineering, but it was really more in the supply chain, was impacted in 2019. And then of course with COVID, people aren't flying, and it really was a double whammy to the industry. So government really needs to step up to bat, and you know, it really needs to do something to maintain it. And
when do you see this? Well, that's a silly question, I suppose. Going to say, when do you see it coming back to normal? I mean, when do you see it
it's
coming
not.
back?
You see it coming back in a couple of years, Steve. I mean, I do sit on through OAC, the Ontario Aerospace Council. I do sit in a lot of economic projections, and
Yes.
the experts are really looking at 2 to 3 years. for the air travel to get back up. People really want to travel again. The airlines just need to prove that it's safe to travel, and so they're doing everything in their power to make the planes as safe as possible. Some social distancing, improve the filtration, the air filtration inside of an aircraft. But it's going to take a while. And of course, borders have to open up too. I mean, you can't travel between Canada and the US right now.
Of course.
Just for a trip. I mean, you could probably, go across on business. But of course, most of those guys are traveling, through business jet. So they're not dealing with commercial, the commercial airlines. But something has to be done, or else the industry is going to take a big hit, and it may never come back if this lasts long enough. So we really got to get through the pandemic and keep industries afloat. And hopefully when it comes back, it'll come back with a new program. So you'll get some engineering requirements, and then of course the rest of it will fall from there.
No doubt. Okay, so I think we're down at regulation, mentality.
Well, it's a highly regulated industry, and so you have to have that kind of mentality. You can't cut corners in aerospace, so you just have to have that mentality, which also makes it hard to sort of change, because you really can't cut corners at the risk of safety. And so you need to know how to work in that kind of an environment, similar to what you see in medical, where you see people trying to get a vaccine for COVID out quicker than as quick as possible, without going through all the testing. And it's just, people just aren't going to believe in the vaccine if they know it's not been tested properly. So you just need to have that sort of regulatory mentality in an aerospace environment.
There's no room for sloppiness.
No.
And that drives actually a culture of the engineers, particularly where you live by being exact. I mean, it permeates even your private life, where you're thoughtful about every action that you're taking, because it becomes part of a way of thinking, a way of living. It's in aerospace that every single decision made, every tolerance you design is such high levels of detail that it impacts your actual personality for doing things with foresight and thought and to exact standards.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so Barry, you've got two things to wrap up: the terrorism, hopefully there won't be any, and the threat of China, Russia, India, Brazil.
Yeah, I think
Western countries.
Terrorism is I think a little less likely these days. In fact, the biggest, like the Americans have said, the biggest threat of terrorism is internal terrorism.
Yes.
Is their homegrown stuff.
Yes.
So I think terrorism is a little bit more under control. Now there is, though, a threat from from China, Russia, and
but not terrorist, competitive threat.
No, it's competitive threat.
Yes.
So you're going to see a new aircraft coming out of China, Russia, or Japan before you're going to see one coming out of North America. And so
and maybe all of them.
Oh, maybe possibly all of them. But I think China, Russia, and Japan are a little bit ahead of India and Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're going to be more at the forefront. But you'll see new aircraft programs coming out of those countries before you'll see another one coming out of Boeing or Airbus. And so, if they're going to produce the plane, the work's going to be there. They're not going to sub the work out to North America, or the engineering. They've got their own engineers these days. So I think that's the threat to the industry.
So the bottom line that Canada or the United States or the West can no longer sit on its high horse and laurels with respect to the competitive advantage it once held. It's losing it unless it can innovates. It has to innovate. These countries must become innovative countries as they were in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm. Well, China, Russia, actually Brazil too, and Japan can build their own aircraft. Like they've built aircraft already. So India, I'm not sure, but certainly the other four have, and so they're major threats to business, the aerospace business, if we don't step up to bat. The thing that those countries have is government support. So that's why we need the government to play a role here, because
Aerospace is a strategic industry.
it's strategic. Yeah.
Well, Barry, let's turn our video on and then we'll wrap up. I'm just going to start my video again. And if you would do it as well, students will get to see you again. Hi, Barry. So
I see.
thank you for that. Why don't you just tell the students what you do in terms of your business and how they can contact you? Just a couple of minutes and then we'll wrap it up.
Feel free to contact us through www.thewallgroup.com. Wall is WOHL and group GROUP. So it's thewallgroup.com. We are recruiters. We do a lot of work in engineering and management, but we also do work in manufacturing as well. So we really, help all levels of employee find work. We'll help you if you have trouble with your resume and you want me to just take a quick look and help you focus it a bit more. I'm happy to do that. I don't critique them for a living, so I'll do it verbally. But if you like, typically what happens, Stephen, if somebody sends me a resume that's 10 pages long,
that's not happening. Nobody wants to read 10 pages.
I thought you got to cut it down to 2 because nobody's going to read 10. You're wasting your time. But I'm happy to help the kids out or your students out as much as I can. And if I can help them find a job, I'm happy to do that.
Tell me, so and even during COVID, you're getting recruiting assignments?
Yeah. In fact, I'm doing a presentation next Saturday on that subject, recruiting during COVID. Yeah, we're not as busy as we were last year. I mean, last year, as an example, it was our busiest year ever in the 10 years we've been in business. Last year was our best year. So we're coming off, a real drop in business, but we've still got business. I mean, I have a new employee starting today. And I've got another person starting next Monday, as an example.
Incredible.
So,
that's incredible.
And I had a guy start, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
So are you recruiting all the way from graduate engineers all the way up to CEO or vice presidents?
Yes.
And where's the bulk? Is the bulk in the middle?
In the middle,
Yeah.
like program management, supervision, middle management, but also in engineers and
Yes.
manufacturing engineering, for example, is a big one. But we also, are doing a lot of work in like, for example, some of the, especially the kids coming in from other countries. Some of them, are engineers, but they don't have their engineering. They don't have their PNs yet, but they want to get some exposure to Canadian, industries. So they'll take some jobs as mechanics or machinists, until they can move into more of an engineering role. But it gives them the hands-on experience.
Yes.
That makes them valuable. And so sometimes you have to take a sort of a step back
Of
to,
course.
to take the step forward.
Yes. Okay, Barry, let's wrap up. I'm going to stop recording now. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that was a wonderful, and the students will hopefully by next year or the year after will be back to physical class presence.
I think it's going to be 2 years, Stephen. I hate to say it. Well, I'd love to get back at it tomorrow, but until the leadership understands this pandemic. I mean, when you see what's going on in the States, you have to shake your head.
Okay. Well, on that note, we'll stop recording, and we'll thank you very much.